Hey, True Believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with X-Men Alpha number 1. This is part 6 of our Age of Apocalypse installment. And this one, a new world, a new beginning. As you can see, Wolverine here on the main part of the cover just really shows how things have changed in this world. Now, the print date on this was February 1995. And this has always been one of my favorite books that I've owned. I'm actually thankful that I picked this up from the racks at my comic shop back home before it closed down. Now, the way this starts off, it says, "Welcome to Seattle. It should be raining. Certainly the man reaching upward thinks so. Though a sudden downpour might slicken his climb, surely it would cut the stench." And then you come to see that these are all culled bodies from the Seattle culling that he's climbing, and he's just kind of like, whoa. And it says here that all non-mutants were warned to flee this state, but many of them didn't want to lose their home, and so they lost their lives. Now this character, this little girl runs into him, and you just see these hard eyes, these years of things that have happened. It says, "He is not of the humans. Nevertheless, he silently cradles the thrashing child in his arms." And this is, I think his name's Unus. He's the prelate of the Infinites. And the Infinites we'll get more into in Factor X, but just kind of want to give you an idea what these characters are called. And so, just look at how cold they are. I ask you to do just one thing, just one little thing. I ask you to exterminate every vestige of human life in the area. I can't even get this. So you're just like, dang. And so they all start to attack this guy. And like, why didn't he show up on our scanners? He's like, it's no fault of ours that we have bad equipment. But Unus here, you can see, is kind of a really bad dictator. He goes, a good workman never blames his tools. Now, before they can attack the stranger, they find out that the stranger is a mutant. And they're like, you're a traitor. And right here we enter the X-Men. Now, that is a gorgeous splash page. And I love how Creed here says, after all, we traitors like to stick together. So that's great. And we can kind of see that the X-Men have changed over the last couple of books that we've gone over. And just gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. Speaking of which, let's talk about who made this. This is a new era in the lives of the amazing X-Men. A Beginnings. Scott Liddell doing the story. Dialogue by Mark Waid. Letters, Starkings with the comics craftsman. Pencils is Roger Cruz with Steve Epting. Inks is Tim Townsend with Dan Panosian. Colors, Steve Buccoletto with the electric crayons. Editor at this time was Bob Harris. Chief was Tom DeFalco. So we got a pretty big all-star team on this book. Now, I don't know if I kind of explained it in X-Men 42 as we were closing off on that book, but when the Age of Apocalypse happened, from what I recall, all the X books were suspended. And everyone thought that they were getting canceled because everyone just stopped. But they didn't realize that they were working on this in secret, so they took their time, which is something that a lot of people don't seem to do anymore. So next, the X-Men attack the Infinites. And what I love here is each panel kind of does that Claremont-esque style. We see Blink and Creed here. He goes, but Blink's plea for mercy goes unheeded. Sabretooth is savage as ever. And Rogue, more so. And we're talking about her ferocity and how Nightcrawler is a teleporter here. We go into Morph, the Morpher, Storm with her electricity. And then as Unus here wants to blow off Magneto's head with this plastic gun. We then see the powers of Bobby Drake, the Iceman. Now, why I went through that is each panel said their powers, kind of give a little bit of their personality. Now, with a lot of more modern books, when they introduce characters, they'd say like, oh, Wolverine, he, the power of healing, and he also hates Mondays. Hugh. So I'm glad that at least at this point in comic history, they kind of left a lot of that cutesiness out, because this is the type of book that you don't want to do that, especially with the X-Men. Unless you're going to do something completely different, keep it out of the modern books. So I'm glad that they did it here. Now, this gets a little poignant here where Magneto says, "Once more the X-Men stand victorious atop the ashes of those who have paid the ultimate price for genetic intolerance. The soldiers of Apocalypse's jackboot, ever forward with each step, crushing any hope that humans and mutants might someday exist in harmony. To think that I too once believed in mutant rule." And Quicksilver's like, "You, Father? I cannot imagine." So, a little intense there. He's like, Magneto would surely have become mankind's greatest foe had he chose a different path. But he's like, he said, it was a fleeting notion spurred by the arrogance of youth and quelled by the spirit of a long-dead friend. His name was Charles Xavier, and he was the greatest man I have ever known. So right there we see how Magneto decided to change the way his life compared to what he would become in the main 616 universe. Now we come to find out that the stranger is Bishop. Now I didn't really want to spoil that, but the reason I am is I like this, because remember in X-Men 42, if you guys are not 42, I keep saying 42, 41. Go check out the review if you guys have not read it. But we get this look of realization, because Bishop gets stuck in the past while everyone else disappeared, because Bishop is a time anomaly. So Magneto's like, "You." And Bishop's like, "You murderer! Your fault. All of it." So some things happen there, which is really interesting. And now we're getting into the genetic pins, and here's Henry McCoy, the Dark Beast, and the Blob. And so you can see that Beast is trying to amplify his powers. He goes, "My task is to genetically amplify the powers of Homo superiors deemed unfit for the cause." So Duke's like, "No more hurt." And he gets interrupted by Havoc. And before either of them can get smashed, he's like, "Good Lord, McCoy, what did you do to him? How can something so big move so?" And the Blob gets dispatched by Cyclops. And even though Henry McCoy is a psychopath butcher in this story, he goes, "If it isn't old Evil Eye himself, and just in the nick of time. Salutations, Cyclops." So we kind of see a little bit of our regular Hank McCoy. And you can see that Havoc and Cyclops do not get along in this universe. There's a power struggle because they're enforcers of, what's his name? Sinister. But, as you can see, Sinister prefers Scott. He goes, "Alex, clean this mess up. Scott, join me for a walk." So you see this look of jealousy and envy in Havoc's eyes. Now there's some things that happen that I don't want to give away. That's why I'm kind of cutting over a lot, because I want you guys to read this in its entirety. But nonetheless, Sinister saying that he has to leave. A lot of this gets picked up in Factor X. This is kind of a build-up book, but they take their time through here to at least understand. Now we see Sentinels. And the Sentinels are the tools of the Human High Council. And people are wondering how they're being shielded, or these mutants and whatnot. And what it is Angel. He goes, "What does it matter, so long as the friends of Warren Worthington enjoy their sanctuary? Drink up. Tonight, mutants and humans alike are guests of the Angel." And then we see this singer named Scarlet, and apparently her name in the 616 universe is Scarlet McKenzie. I don't know a whole lot about her other than her original first appearance was in, what was that called? Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown back in 1988. So I thought at first this was like the Black Widow or something, and she was just called Scarlet, but that is not the case. So if you guys know more about her, let me know. And now while Scarlet is singing, here's Karma, one of the New Mutants. And I like how Warren here says she's beautiful. Isn't she, Karma? In a human sort of way. You have company. The Cajun. So in terms of the New Mutants, they're scattered about the globe, and we'll get more into it. So Gambit needs Angel to get him to Magneto. And he's like, how important is this? Think about it. Think about the wounds I got to open just to look at the man for what he's taken from me. Would I ask to go through that if it wasn't important? So if you guys remember what happened in X-Men Chronicles #2, which if you haven't, go check out the review or pick up the copy of the book at your local comic shop. So if you all have the True Believer copy, this is where that book ends. And this is why I wanted to use my original copy, because here we find out that the X-Men's base in this universe is Westchester County. And it says, in this house, a very special child was born. So here, this is where Magneto and Rogue's son, Charles, was born. And I kind of wish they would have shown how they ended up here at the Westchester County, but it explains how it's hidden, so it's just not sitting out in the middle of nowhere. So kind of interesting that we have a child named Charles born in Westchester in the mansion. So really interesting take on that. And again, some more things happen with Bishop. Magneto, in a sense, is kind of trying to fight what he's recognizing. Like, he doesn't want to face the truth. But what he says is, we need to find out what the man knows. And so he asks Rogue to touch him. And he goes, since Jean was lost to us, the X-Men's telepathic options have been sorely limited. So again, X-Men Chronicles #2, check out the review, because I at least go over that part. Now the Horsemen convene with Apocalypse, and this is this first Aoe appearance here. And he's talking about how he's duping the humans and what he's using to dupe the humans. And he's always saying, so often do I rely on the naivete of humans, and so rarely am I disappointed. And so you find out that the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse are somehow tied into Weapon X and Jean, because here we go into Europe. And how are they tied together? Read the book. But this leads us into Jean and Weapon X. And here we are introduced to Moira and her husband, Bolivar. So this is Moira Trask instead of Moira McTaggart. And they have to read the information that Logan and Jean have sent to them. And here you see Brian Braddock and Emma Frost. So why they're with the European High Council, I don't know, since they're supposed to be mutants, so God only knows. But the one thing I did want to end on is this splash page, because when Rogue touches Bishop, there's a psychic backlash. And here, this Earth's 295 Magneto sees a glimpse of what his life would have been, and all of its graphic, gory detail of the past that Xavier and he himself have taken. And like, even though that he may not be the savior of this other universe, it goes, a world that might have been. A world that perhaps should have been. So yeah, guys, X-Men Alpha here, great book, and it really takes its time in terms of building up all the stories, because, you know, we have Generation Next, Amazing X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, Factor X, Excalibur, all sorts of goodness to go over here. And it all starts here in X-Men Alpha. That's why originally back in 1995, this was the jumping on point. But in terms of suggested reading, that's why we went through the first 3 issues of Blink. There's a reason we're not going to go over 4 for a while. And I also wanted to do the Chronicle books, because it sort of leads up to where we're at now, where things make a little more sense. So if you guys have enjoyed X-Men Alpha, please first and foremost check out your local comic shop and see if they may have a back issue of this. Even if it's not the foil, I'm thankful that I got the foil cover, but I think there's a regular one too. And as I said, if you pick up the True Believer copy, it stops at Angel and Gambit's dialogue. That's where it stops, so it's just kind of like, oh man, that stinks. And if you guys have enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a minute to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little apocalypse bell next to subscribe, That way, as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and just love to have a dialogue with everybody down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description below. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by and checking out this book with us. I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.